You can sketch the graphs of reciprocal functions such as y equals 1 over x, y equals minus 3 over x, y equals 4 over x squared and y equals minus 1 over x squared by considering their asymptotes. An asymptote is a line in which the graph approaches but never reaches. The graph y equals k over x with k greater than 0, where k is a real constant, have asymptotes at x equals 0 and y equals 0. So here's the sketch of the graph y equals 1 over x. When y equals k over x with k greater than 0, the graph would take a shape like this. The graph of y equals k over x with k less than 0 have asymptotes at x equals 0 and y equals 0. Now here's the sketch of the graph of y equals minus 1 over x. The graph y equals k over x with k less than 0 would take a shape like this. Now let's take a look at a few more forms of reciprocal graphs. The graph of y equals k over x squared with k greater than 0, where k is a real constant, have asymptotes at x equals 0 and y equals 0. Now here's the sketch of the graph y equals 1 over x squared. When y equals k over x squared with k greater than 0, the graph would take a shape like this. As we know, x squared is always positive and here k is greater than 0, so the y values are all positive. And hence, the graph y equals k over x squared with k greater than 0 would take this shape. The graph y equals k over x squared with k less than 0 also have asymptotes at x equals 0 and y equals 0. For example, the graph shown here is for y equals minus 1 over x squared. When y equals k over x squared with k less than 0, the graph would take a shape like this. As we know, x squared is always positive and since here k is less than 0, all the y values are negative. So, the graph y equals k over x squared with k less than 0 would take a shape like this. So, to make it clear, let's take a look at a few examples. On the same axis, sketch the graphs of y equals 2 over x and y equals 4 over x. So first, let's sketch the graph of y equals 2 over x. This is a y equals k over x graph with k greater than 0, so the graph would take a shape like this. Now, if we take y equals 4 over x, this is also a y equals k over x graph with k greater than 0. Now, to make it clear, let's substitute values for x and check. So, for the graph y equals 2 over x, when x equals 1, y equals 2, and when x equals 2, y equals 1, and when x equals 4, y equals 2 divided by 4 equals 0.5. Now, for the graph y equals 4 over x, when x equals 1, y equals 4, when x equals 2, y equals 2, and when x equals 4, y equals 1. So, you can see for any positive value of x, the y values for the graph y equals 4 over x is greater than that of y equals 2 over x. So, in this quadrant where x is greater than 0, for any values of x, 4 over x is greater than 2 over x. Now, if we were to check negative values of x, for the graph y equals 2 over x, when x equals minus 1, y equals minus 2, and when x equals minus 2, y equals minus 1. When x equals minus 4, y equals 2 divided by minus 4 equals minus 0.5. Now, for the graph y equals 4 over x, when x equals minus 1, y equals minus 4, when x equals minus 2, y equals minus 2, and when x equals minus 4, y equals minus 1. So, you can see for all the negative values of x, the y values for the graph y equals 2 over x is greater than that for y equals 4 over x. And hence, for this quadrant where x is less than 0, for any values of x, 4 over x is less than 2 over x. So the graph y equals 4 over x would take this shape. As you can see, these are the two graphs of y equals 2 over x and y equals 4 over x, and both of these graphs have asymptotes at x equals 0 and y equals 0. Y equals minus 4 over x and y equals minus 2 over x. Both of these graphs are y equals k over x graph with k less than 0 and have asymptotes at x equals 0 and y equals 0. The graph of y equals minus 2 over x would take a shape like this, and if we were to check the values of x for the graph y equals minus 2 over x, when x equals 1, y equals minus 2, when x equals 2, y equals minus 1, and when x equals 4, y equals minus 0.5. And for the graph y equals minus 4 over x, when x equals 1, y equals minus 4, and when x equals 2, y equals minus 2, when x equals 4, y equals minus 1. So, for all the positive values of x, the y values of the graph y equals minus 2 over x are greater than that of y equals minus 4 over x. And if we check with negative x values, for the graph y equals minus 2 over x, when x equals minus 1, y equals 2, when x equals minus 2, y equals 1, and when x equals minus 4, y equals 0.5. For the graph y equals minus 4 over x, when x equals minus 1, y equals 4, when x equals minus 2, y equals 2, and when x equals minus 4, y equals 1. So, for all the negative values of x, the y values for the graph y equals minus 4 over x is greater than that of y equals minus 2 over x. So, for this quadrant, when x is greater than 0, for all the values of x, minus 4 over x is less than minus 2 over x. And for this quadrant, when x is less than 0, for all the values of x, minus 4 over x is greater than minus 2 over x. So, as you can see here, this is the graph of y equals minus 4 over x. And hence, both the graphs y equals minus 2 over x and y equals minus 4 over x would look like this. Y equals 2 over x squared and y equals 5 over x squared. Both of these graphs are y equals k over x squared with k greater than 0 graph. As x squared is always positive and k is greater than 0, all the y values are positive. Both of these graphs have asymptotes at x equals 0 and y equals 0. Here the graph y equals 2 over x squared would take a shape like this. And the graph y equals 5 over x squared would look like this. This is because x squared is always positive, and for y equals 5 over x squared, here the numerator is 5, which is larger than y equals 2 over x squared, where the numerator is 2. So, for all values of x, the y values of y equals 5 over x squared is greater than that of y equals 2 over x squared, and hence the two graphs would take the following shapes. Y equals minus 2 over x squared and y equals minus 6 over x squared. Both of these graphs are y equals k over x squared with k less than 0 graph with asymptotes at x equals 0 and y equals 0. As x squared is always positive and k less than 0, all the y values are negative here. The graph y equals minus 2 over x squared would take this shape, and the graph y equals minus 6 over x squared would look like this. This is because here x squared is always positive and the numerator of y equals minus 6 over x squared is minus 6, which is less than that of the numerator of the graph y equals minus 2 over x squared, and hence for all the values of x, the y values of y equals minus 6 over x squared is less than that of y equals minus 2 over x squared. So, the two graphs y equals minus 6 over x squared and y equals minus 2 over x squared would take this shape.